Hey, what's going on, guys? I don't know. I just kind of want to make a video about I, I don't know. I guess my my outlooks on a lot of things, so to speak. Here lately, I've been on like a little binge of uh, like asking people like where they see themselves and like prime career goals and I don't know, just all kinds of stuff, and I don't know. I mean, the more I talk to people, and the more I talk to my friends, and whatnot. And, I really get into those conversations. I don't know. I feel like I get more more upset about about like, responses and more or less how I mean how people like belittle themselves when they talk about that stuff. I mean that said person might not see it when they talk about it, um, but I can. I don't know. I feel like when I talk to a lot of people, ask them like where do they want to go, and like will be a like a set career where it would be just something they just really have passion for and love for. Uh, you really don't see that too much. Uh, so I don't know. I mean, let's just take for example. A lot of people that'll that kind of like settle for things, and I feel like that's one of the things that really upsets me most is when I see people settling for like a career just because they kind of like it, and something they can deal with, and that's kind of things that really that really like really gets under my skin is when people settle for things, and the only reason they settle for things is because they feel like they as a person cannot do anything more, or they're not smart enough to do anything more. Um, but I think a lot of it comes down to uh, is more or less just being scared of failure, and if it's not that, then I think it really comes down to just just kind of being lazy, I guess. I mean, if that's kind of perspective you want to look out on it. I mean, let's just take for example, people that I don't know. I see a lot of let's say girls, for example, that um, I wouldn't be a vet, you know. And I'm not saying nothing wrong with being a vet. I'm not saying you have to be a pathetic individual to want to go be a vet, um, but I see a lot of people that will settle for something that's say like being a vet because it's something they they kind of like doing, and it's something they can deal with. Um, when in true value, they might have an extreme passion for you know let's say being like a geologist or something like that. Um, and the only reason they don't go for that geologist is because they see this big huge they see this big huge wall, and they see all this hard work, and I mean just all kinds of crazy stuff, and it really puts a scare in people, and they're like there's no way I can do that, um, and like I just aforementioned earlier, they belittle themselves, but I don't know. Something I notice, is you don't try to build a wall. You don't set out to build a wall when you think about like what you're going to do, and where you're going, or and where you want to start. You don't set out and say sorry. You don't you don't set out and say, hey, I'm gonna build the biggest baddest wall out there. I mean that's just not where you start. You say I'm gonna take this brick, and I'm gonna lay this brick as perfectly as I can, and I'm gonna do this every single day, and eventually you'll have a wall. And and and, and I think the moral is what I'm trying to say is you have to just take day by day, and every single day just make sure you're doing what you need to do, and and you're working towards that goal. But don't start out saying like, all right, I'm going for it. I'm doing it all. I'm doing it all right now. It's because that's not where you start, because you will overcome yourself, and it'll just be too much on you, and that's when the whole state of mind of like, man, I can't do this, I'm just gonna give up, kind of thing comes in, because excellence is not it's not a skill, it's an attitude. And if you only do what you'll never do too much. And what I mean by that is, if you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over, uh, and you never try anything more, and you never go out and put out risks, you're not going to go anywhere. I mean, you're just going to stay right there, and you're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over. And I think that falls back on, because a lot of people are scared of failure. A lot of people are scared of sticking their neck out and um, leaving their current job, and getting out of their comfort zone to take that risk to go get a better job, or taking that risk to go out and try to do college and work at the same time, or go out there and try to start that business that they've always wanted, um, and it really does upset me, because I can kind of relate to that. I mean, I'm not saying I'm the greatest person. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I've got everything set out. I'm not saying that uh, I'm just like extremely motivated and inspired by everything, and every day is just a fucking sunny day, because I'm just like everybody else. I do have those days where it just hits me and it gets hard, but I mean, I just feel like you just have to keep pushing. Just keep your head above water, you because you do have to walk through the rain, to get to that rainbow, no matter what. There is no easy way to become successful. There is no just shortcut to being extremely wealthy and living the dream. That there's no shortcut, because if there was, everybody would be doing it, and that dream would no longer be available. um, but don't ever let anybody tell you cannot do something, because um, vast majority of the time it's because they think they cannot do it themselves. I mean, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's your friends, family, your biggest idol, your girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, husband. Don't ever let anybody tell you cannot do something. I don't care what it is, or like who it is. Just like I've mentioned, but don't ever let anybody tell you cannot do something. I mean, um, I mean, if that was the case, and if everybody listened to everybody else, then I mean, our civilization would be nowhere. Um, I mean, just take Facebook for a prime example. When Mark Zuckerberg was starting up Facebook in college, I mean, it was obviously something completely different than it is now. But I mean, he had hundreds of people telling him, just shut it down. It's not gonna work. It's stupid. There's nobody gonna use it, and all kinds of lawsuits, and there's all kinds of people after him, and uh, but he just he kept pushing, and he believed it was gonna work, and and if you don't believe in yourself, then nobody else will. Um, and I think that has a really deep meaning to it, because like I just said, if Mark would have stopped, then he'd be like, you guys are right, this probably isn't gonna work, there's no use even trying, then he wouldn't be where he is now. I mean today, he's worth millions. His net worth is in the millions. More money than every single one of my friends on Facebook could spend it a day. uh, and and I think he really is a prime example of why not to give up, because I mean he actually did go through a lot, so and another thing I think is, you really have to have a lot of passion, for what you're doing, because it's so hard that if you don't have a deep passion for what you're doing, any rational person would give up. And so if you're not having fun doing it, and if you don't love it, then eventually you'll give up. And and I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of successful people, love what they did, or they love what they do, so they can persevere when it gets tough. Um, and the ones that didn't love it, quit because, any, rational, sane person is not gonna, keep working, their butts off for something they don't love. And that those are the people that end up giving up. Um, so I mean, I don't know. That's kind of that. I don't know. As far as as far as not like believing in yourself, I mean, I feel like I can. I mean, I can definitely relate to that. Um, when I was, I mean, growing up in my teenage years, yeah, I was always in and out of trouble. And I was on probation for 5, 6 years, in and out of jail, constantly in fights, stealing, just, I mean, just anything, you name it. I was always doing that. Well, uh, and then also, I ended up dropping out my freshman or sophomore year, from Stebbins, and well, later on when I was 18, I went and got my GED, but um, I don't know, that was really something that really that really made me give up when, I was younger, that really thought that I was, worthless, or not, or